Hi, I'm Teri. Welcome to another show of Moments and Memories that's brought to you by the Key Biscayne Historical and Heritage Society. Today we've got a treat for you. We're at the offices of the Islander News, and with me is Ann Owens. Now, Ann Owens is the president of the corporation called Samar Publishing Incorporated that is doing business as the Islander News. Wow, that's quite a title. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you, and welcome to our offices, Teri.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting us. This is really a treat. I always
It
get
should
the
be
newspaper, I look at it, and I go, well, how did this all come about? How did this all happen?
Yeah.
Because you're a little Chicago girl, right?
I'm a Chicago girl, and I was a teacher in my other life, and I was planning to be a teacher. I was substitute teaching when my neighbor next door, Marg Ha, who owned the paper, came next door and asked me if I was busy, would I work a couple hours a week at the paper that she was putting together in her den.
Now, was this on Key Biscayne, or was this
It was
back
on
in Chicago?
Palmwood Lane, right next door to me.
Oh my! So a neighbor came to you, but from Chicago, how did you get to Key Biscayne?
Okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about that.
Okay.
All right. Well, actually, my son, three sons, Dave,
three
Mike,
sons
and Jim,
okay,
and my husband Clyde, and a cat and a dog, came by train from Chicago. I had spent the previous winter, in the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh dear.
And he called me Ingrid, that's my first name.
Yeah.
And I remember a visit that they made to me because I was in isolation. And a visit they made to me outside. I could talk through the window.
Yeah.
And he said, we're moving to Florida. We're not going to stay here in the cold winters anymore. So that's what our decision was made to do that. And within a month, 6 weeks, we were here. It didn't take long, but we came by train so that the kids could appreciate the distance and the climate change, because we came in February of 1966, and it was cold here up north.
Sure, and that must have been some train ride.
So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and so that was a thrill. And we arrived at 9 o'clock at night, in the middle of the night, practically to us, dark, and we came across the bridge. And of course, we didn't have a view. We couldn't see anything.
There were no
except
lights.
Lights here and there a little bit. And not until the next morning when we woke up did we realize where we came. And it indeed was paradise.
Amazing.
I couldn't believe it. The boys went outside immediately and took to the puddles and looked for pollywogs. And it was just fabulous. We rented a house across from the school. Mm-hmm. And Betty Rice was the real estate woman who helped us in those days.
I remember that name.
Yeah, and so she helped us find this place on Glenridge, which is right across from the school.
Correct.
Convenient.
Uh-huh.
We had one car between us, and bicycles. We had bicycles, and there we lived for 6 months until we found our place on Palmwood Lane.
And how did you find Key Biscayne? I mean, you just find a dot on a map someplace warm? Or?
Well, the thing is that Clyde's parents were very good friends of the Woodman family, and they lived here on the Key. They came in 1953 or 4, somewhere in there.
They were probably telling you how great it was down here. Say, hey, that's where I'm going.
And Clyde stayed with them when he came to interview with Westinghouse.
Okay.
And he was working at the Chicago Tribune in advertising, and one of his main accounts was Westinghouse.
Oh, wonderful. So he was a newspaper man.
So he was kind of a newspaper man, and he resigned that job to move to Florida, and found out Westinghouse had an opening in Miami and in Atlanta, and he interviewed into both places. But there was no doubt in his mind. And he called me on the phone and said, guess what? It's going to be Key Biscayne that we're going to start.
He loved you very much.
Oh, he did. And he loved the kids. And it was a huge adventure.
Oh, it
Left
was.
all our family crying and
Oh, it's
sad.
hard. Change is always hard, but then the
Yeah.
door opens, it's a new beginning.
Yeah.
So then tell me, so your neighbor, the newspaper was in existence at this time?
No, it started up again. It started up in November of that year. That was that was February of 1966.
1966.
And Sue Morton, who also lived on Palmwood Lane,
Yeah.
down the street from us,
Yeah.
she started the Islander as we know it today.
Oh,
Now, I might
okay.
mention that there were other newspapers on the Key before that.
There was more than one newspaper?
There were several newspapers, and we have a bound volume here,
Yeah.
a record of several of them.
Get out.
Okay, isn't that great? And
But it was a tiny
they
little
lasted
island.
not very long because of advertising, lack of advertising
Sure.
revenue, which they needed.
Well, there weren't that
Yeah.
many merchants there
No,
during that time.
no,
Or that
no,
many people, for
no.
that matter.
That's right. I can't even tell you what the population was then, maybe 4,000.
And how
5,000.
big were the newspapers? How many pages did they have?
Well,
in
they
them?
were probably anywhere from 8 to 12. To
Oh,
12.
pretty big.
And some were in collaboration with the newspapers over in Coconut Grove. There was a Coconut Grove newspaper.
Oh, got it, like a
And-
combination.
Yes, a combination for Miami and Key Biscayne.
I wouldn't think there'd be
So-
that much news.
But there is. Oh, it's filled with news. Just filled with news.
So this one is called the Key
This is
Journal.
Key Journal. Yeah, that's the first one. That in November 11th, 1954.
Oh my God.
And then it goes until the last issue, which closed, and they apologized. And let's see where that might be. Actually, it went to February 1955,
1955.
and
Well,
that's how long that lasted. We had.
and it's a nice newspaper. It's set
it's
up
not
real
bad.
nice.
Look at it. It's gone.
It looks very nice.
Lots of social items and everything about Key. The Key.
Uh-huh. And the color, now was it originally that color or did it
no,
fade over
this
time?
is the fade newspaper color that fades over time, yeah. And it's pretty good condition.
I love looking at the ads in an old newspaper, like here.
The prices.
The prices, yes.
Right.
Steak, 79 cents a pound for sirloin.
Yeah. Right.
Shrimp,
exactly.
49 cents a pound.
Yeah, right. 33 cents for a 5-pound bag of potatoes.
Potatoes.
No.
But 33 cents was dear those
But it
days.
was all relative, you know. I
That's
mean,
right.
even the prices in real estate were low at that time. And when we finally bought our house on Palmwood, we paid $22,000 for it.
Oh, and how many bedrooms did you
It
have?
had 3 bedrooms, but ours had 2 baths because it was built by the Reeds, Mr. Reed, who worked with he was the foreman for Mackle Brothers,
Ah, okay.
and they had him build some houses on a couple of blocks.
right.
So we were in that, and we were actually in the model house, so we had 2 bathrooms. I mean, but they are small because these homes were built for veterans.
Oh, that's right. They were young
yeah,
families
after
just
World War
starting
II,
out.
and they were built for veterans, so they were quite small, didn't have much closet space or anything like that. And of course now you can see what people have. They either have demolished them today,
Yeah.
or they've added on and added on. Beautifully though.
No,
you
they
know.
did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Those were the affordable homes of the
Yes,
era.
exactly.
And
The
then-
original home cost the owners $13,000.
Amazing.
Whereas the Mackle home started around $9,000.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So you had the bridge. You had the original bridge. It was a drawbridge
Yes, it
coming
was
across.
Bascule Bridge. It was a drawbridge.
And was that
which became a
difficult?
problem after a while. But we learned to get used to the times that we needed to go off the island, so that we wouldn't run into traffic.
Yeah, you
because-
learn the hours to go after a while.
Yeah, because there was in '68 the Cape Florida was purchased opened, and it was purchased by the state of Florida.
Oh, so that brought a lot
And
of
so
traffic.
that brought
on.
people on that end on the southern end, and of course Crandon Park on the northern end.
Right. So then you're telling me that your neighbor, that she had the newspaper.
Marg and Sam. Mhm.
And is this the newspaper that she had?
No, these were all others before.
But
These
she
were
had the
separate.
Islander, the
She had
original
the
Islander.
Islander, yeah. She
And
had-
so you went over to help her out.
I went to help her out.
And what did you do for her?
And I was paste up.
Okay, what is paste up?
Paste up means.
I mean,
paste
I
up.
can imagine
was
what
the
it is,
paste
but
up
what
girl.
is it?
She had on her card table, a big table actually, spread out
Yeah.
the pages of the paper on huge paper.
Right.
Actually the size of the newspaper. And she had she had cut out the ads. I mean, she'd already made them because she'd had the paper for a while, so she already had them all produced.
Uh-huh.
And it was all done by typewriter, mostly
Oh, you-
typewriter.
Just sit there
And
at a
she had
typewriter.
a little machine we called the headliner that made headlines, and it was film. It was actually film.
It was film.
and we pasted those. I used rubber cement.
Oh my
Probably
gosh.
no one knows what that is today.
Probably not today. It was kind of that clear, sticky stuff.
Yeah, clear sticky stuff. And I brushed the backs of all of the elements,
Yeah.
the pieces, the news, the headlines, and the ads, and I pasted them on the page.
Well, that's quite an art
And I had
form.
to have an eye. I mean, we used
Sure.
a drawing board, and I can't remember some of the names of the tools we had,
Yeah.
but anyway.
But to
So
figure out what's important, what
well,
should
she
be
laid
larger.
that all out
Mhm.
before I came to work.
Yeah.
After a while, I became involved in that, in placing the ads on the pages and then the news,
And
strips
then-
of news.
Then when did you and your husband, you purchased the newspaper later on?
Well, much later on,
Much
yeah,
later on.
because the Marg and Sam, the first owner was Sue Morton,
Sue Morton,
and
right.
she sold almost immediately, within a month, unfortunately for her and for us. She sold because her husband was transferred. He was in the Coast Guard, and he was transferred to Key West. She
Okay.
sold the paper to Richard McCullough Jones, and he owned the paper. I'll refer to my notes, in 1967, then right away. And he sold the paper to Margaret Ha in 1968.
It must have been very difficult to well, they had competition because you have two other newspapers, but it must have
Well,
been very
no,
difficult.
there weren't any other. These had all folded.
Well, everything had folded
They
by
had
then.
all folded, right. So this was the most recent attempt to start up another newspaper. And people felt there was a need for it.
Of course.
You know, to bring the community together, to be the heart of the community with advertising, of course, to support it,
That's
and
right.
the news.
And about how many, the population, about what was?
Well, probably at that time it was around 6,000, 5,000 maybe.
Okay,
That's
so
a good size.
it's a good
yeah,
size.
it was growing.
So
It was growing steadily.
And do you
yeah.
remember how much the newspaper cost?
Oh, yeah. Well, it started out at 25 cents.
25 cents.
Yeah.
And was it a weekly at that
It was
time?
always a weekly.
It was always
It
been a
first
weekly.
started on a Wednesday, and then it was moved to Thursday.
Because of printing? or?
Yes, and scheduling and trying to get the news in before the weekend, have as many things up to date before the weekend
Got it.
for people, for planning and so on and
Oh,
so
that's
forth.
right, to plan what they're going to do for the weekend.
Mhm.
And,
And
then,
for advertisers too, and especially because they had sales and things that they wanted people to know about. That was important to advertise to get their message out.
Sure, because Saturday weekends are a big purchasing day.
And
I
they
guess.
became more and more popular because of people that came here to the island from off island.
Well, that's
and
right.
tourists.
Sure, because if the lighthouse was open, that property, then people would come down.
Right, Key Biscayne Hotel. People came to the Key Biscayne Hotel. There was another hotel, the Galen Beach Hotel, and the Silver Sands Motel.
And they would all
So
advertise in your newspaper.
They all pretty much, yes, they did. Yeah, their restaurants and the bars and lounges and so on and so forth.
Did they have a staff then when the last person had it? Was there a staff? Like, did you have a reporter? Did they have someone in
we
circulation?
usually just had, when I came to work, there was just me and Margaret.
You and
she
Margaret.
did the advertising sales and everything. I eventually came into that to help her out. But then we had a photographer. We had somebody who would take pictures for us, or we'd take pictures. I mean, I always carried a camera with me. And also, then later, when under Mark Ha, or under Thomas O'Brien, Ann Tennis was the editor. And we all had walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
And were hooked up to the fire rescue. So anytime there was a police emergency or fire emergency or stuff, we would hear the
You were on the cutting edge.
hear the news coming over, right, breaking news, and take off.
And then you'd go be an ambulance chaser or fire engine
well,
chaser.
I don't do that anymore, but I sure did.
But
I followed
sure.
fire engines. We all did.
Sure.
To find the kids all did. In those days, we had a volunteer fire department.
Oh my God.
And so that was a fun thing to do, the small hometown excitement.
Yes,
you know.
yes. What was the biggest news of the day those days? I know
And those-
today it's so
probably
different.
real estate, I'd say, because as Key Biscayne became more and more popular and well known, and especially after President Nixon lived here, that
that's
brought
right.
a lot of people to the Key and a lot of awareness.
That put you
for
on the
this
international map.
fabulous place, right? He was a friend of somebody who lived on the island, B.B. Rebozo.
Yeah.
So that brought them for.
And then the Secret Service and all that. So that was
Oh,
a
we
big,
always knew when they were coming too. This is well known among us oldies. We always knew when the president was going to come because we'd see the Secret Servicemen gassing up cars at the gas station. They always knew. The attendants always knew
Oh, yeah.
when he was coming, and then the Secret Service would appear.
The behavior
And
patterns are
very,
amazing.
very obvious in their shorts, their Bermuda shorts, and flowering tropical shirts. It was fun. It was a very exciting time. It called us all to mind, to our government, our federal government,
Sure.
and to the presidents and the people who run it and the leaders.
Absolutely.
It was a wonderful lesson for the children in school, in the schools, and everything.
Oh, I think it was a wonderful thing that happened. Absolutely. Now, the people that bought the newspaper, did they buy it on the stand, or did you have subscriptions?
Well, at the time, we had all newspaper deliverers. We had carriers, young people, who
Oh,
delivered
so the kids would have
newspaper
like a
in those
newspaper
days.
route.
Yes, and they had their newspaper routes, and they delivered it.
So that's how you get the newspaper, that you would subscribe to it and you get the paper.
Oh, and it's always been a subscription newspaper, always by subscription. That way, we know we have an accounting.
That's true.
And we know people want it.
That's true.
And we still, there's some areas on the Key that we need to branch out into now.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
work on.
Because
work
you
on
need that. You
subscription.
have to plan on those revenues to keep things going,
Right.
because you're always looking forward.
Right. Well, we always know people are reading it because we hear when people are upset about something or they didn't get their paper. Or
Oh, that,
right.
I
They
can-
send letters, and the opinion pages have volumes of letters and all. Then we know people are reading it and
Gotcha.
using it,
Uh-huh.
to get their messages across too.
What, I know you were working with the newspaper. Now, your husband, he was with Westinghouse.
Well, Clyde was with Westinghouse. He left that after a year, and he went in business for himself as a sales rep for magazines and special interest publications.
Okay.
And so he sold space in those publications.
Mm-hmm.
And most were local. Some were in-flight magazines for airplanes, for planes, and so on and so forth. And so he did that for a while. And then he dropped the business. He dropped that and got out of it and went into the kitchen remodeling business.
Oh, dear. He was a jack of all
When I went
trades.
on vacation one autumn to visit my mother in Chicago,
Uh-huh.
he redid our kitchen.
Oh, that's a
When I
win-win.
came back, it was all done. That was like 10 days. And so people saw this and they loved it. And he decided he would go into that business and drop the rat race of the advertising world.
So how did that escalate to purchasing the
Well,
newspaper?
so I was working for the paper, obviously, at the
Right.
time, and he was always so supportive of me. He was very proud of that fact. And so Tom O'Brien bought the paper from Marg Ha,
Mhm.
and he owned it for several years. He bought it in 1971 and sold it to Clyde and myself in 1985.
Oh, okay. So he had it for a good time.
Yes, he did have it for a good time. He'd always wanted to sell it to a husband and wife team, Key
Well, that's
Biscayners.
interesting.
And when he first asked me about it, I didn't tell Clyde. I was so scared. I was very nervous about it. But however, I was managing the paper pretty much at that point.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting. We decided to buy. That was very
And your
exciting.
husband thought that would be-
July of 1985.
Oh, boy, you'll
It
never
was
forget
the best
that day.
of his life. The best day. It was
Oh,
the
how
happiest day for him.
He was happy.
It was so wonderful.
So when you
Yeah.
bought the newspaper, did you have visions of something you were going to do different with it?
Not particularly, except be very visible in the community.
Mhm.
Clyde went on to he was in charge of circulation, and he was in charge of all the advertising, display advertising. And he loved being out, walking the streets and greeting the people and meeting the customers and selling ads out there. And of course, that was his background.
Of course. And did he specialize people on the Key, or did he try and get advertisers
Oh
off
yes,
the
no,
Key?
we went off island too as much as we could.
Sometimes
yeah.
you have to.
Yeah,
Because the
you
island's
have
very
to.
small.
Right. In order to to build up your advertising.
And then did you...
So I'd say, you going back to your question about the biggest news, was real estate. As people began to move here
Sure.
and discover this wonderful place, and real estate for a long time. Of course, that's been our background in the newspaper.
That's true. If you look at it today, there's a lot of newspaper
A
real
lot of
estate ads.
advertising, but yes, and we're very grateful for that, and we try to service them well.
Because it is a destination. I think once people come to Key Biscayne, they say, "Oh, this is a place I'd like to live."
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
what's for sale? And of
And
course, you
what's
run
for sale, and the paper is read all over the world, not by internet, but by people sending it to people or people subscribing to it.
Right.
And
Oh, that's right, because people who are the snowbirds, now they'll take the newspaper
they
and
take it
you'll mail
when
it
they
to them.
leave. They take it when we send it to them.
What was the
they're
biggest
away.
challenge you had when you bought it? What was it, July of 1985?
Okay.
I mean, it's all of a sudden, okay, now our wish came true. We have the newspaper. What was the biggest challenge?
I think to keep our customers, the readers, happy, to keep them, we didn't want to make any really drastic changes, because they were happy with, we thought, with the paper as it is, and they were thrilled to have us because we were very involved in the community. And right away, we started in with community service. Clyde found out in his travels through the Key and everything, he found out that the fire department which was Dade County at the time.
Right, the volunteer.
No, it was Dade County's
Oh, it was-
fire department.
right, okay.
We had our own volunteer fire department as well. But Dade County, and it was located where it is today, actually, as you come on to Key Biscayne in Calusa Park area.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah,
Got
there's a
it.
unit there now. And so that was the one that served all of Key Biscayne at the time. But Clyde found out that they didn't have any equipment for our high-rise condominiums that were going up. The
Clyde
Casa Del
found out
Mar in
about that.
particular with its 28 stories. And so we, the Islander, bought the rappelling equipment for the fire department.
Oh, I think that's wonderful.
And they did a demonstration
Mhm.
off the top of the Casa Del Mar.
Yeah.
And that was filmed by the Herald, and it was in the news all over Miami. And then they also filmed, and we have a picture of it in one of our frames here, in the local news. See the
I see that.
helicopter?
Yes, yes.
They're coming down and they're rappelling to the bridge. And they did a life-saving
Sure.
demonstration off the high bridge.
But how wonderful that your husband all of a sudden realized that. He says,
He
wait
did
a
well
minute.
by being out in the community, saw the need, and I think that's what we kept up with then. We became members. I became members of the 4th of July Parade Committee, both of us, and I joined Rotary Club. I joined after he died, after he passed away, but to become involved in the community so we would know about the needs of the community so we could serve them and do what was best.
Well, it sounds like you adopted Key Biscayne.
And they kind of
extended family.
adopted us too, I think. So we became the heartbeat of Key Biscayne, I'd like to say.
Now, your husband, I'm sad to say that he passed away.
He
shortly
died of
after-
cancer 2 years after we bought the paper. And
Oh
it
my
was
gosh!
just
So we'd
really
just gotten it started.
unfair, and it was tragic. you
It
know.
was.
But our faith, my faith, and my church and all, and God kept me going. And a lot of people wanted to buy the paper. I got
I'll
a lot
bet.
of offers thinking, well, I as a woman probably couldn't handle the paper. But I did.
Boy, were they wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So we had an appraisal. I had an appraisal shortly after that to see our worth, and was kind of toying with the idea of selling, but I never did. No, this is where I wanted to be. I think this is my mission. I think God wanted me to be here, that I wanted to be of service to Him as well. And so that's why I stayed, and here's where we are.
And we got the benefit of that.
I'm
And I'm impressed with you because the temptation to sell the
I'm
newspaper
honored.
must have been very strong because you had 3 sons. Now, how old were your boys at this time? of that?
Well, Mike was in med school, and David was a nurse. He had studied to be a nurse, and he
Right.
was in Jackson Hospital. And Jimmy was still in school, and he was kind of undecided about his future. But I think he was tending to healthcare, as well as like his brothers
Right.
wanted to go into healthcare.
And did
And
they
so-
work in the newspaper at all as
No.
teenagers?
No.
That was
They-
mom and dad's
well,
business.
no, they never did, as a matter of fact. They may have substituted as a carrier here and there, but they weren't
Right.
one of the regular ones.
Yeah.
No.
And then this event, overwhelming event happened in your life. So
Yeah.
it's like, now what do we do?
Now what do? We keep on going, and I used my position, of course, to write some columns, and we had at that point Linda Thornton was our publisher and editor. Oh, I can mention too that the brokerage firm who did our appraisals had suggested that I hire a publisher. So
right.
I could step back a little bit and then remain in the community. I had given myself the name title Director for Community Affairs.
Oh, that's a good title.
So I
like that
have
one.
a newspaper title as well as the corporation title.
It took a little bit of the pressure off too.
Yeah, it did. It did. It did. So Linda was editor and publisher. And by the way, my staff at that time kept the paper going because I was with Clyde the whole time he was sick.
Yeah. He was
From
sick for a long
February
time.
until April when he passed away.
I'm so sorry.
And they were wonderful. They were wonderful. And I thank them. I was very grateful for them.
That's when you appreciate people the most, when you need them,
Yeah,
and they come
really
in without
stepped up,
being asked.
and they were concerned too. You know, they
course.
was concerned about what was happening. So, so I used the columns as a way to thank the community and also to write about different things in the community. And my best time for me to work was always early morning. And it still is if I want to write something, and I do columns occasionally now.
That's when the inspiration comes
When
to
the
you.
inspiration is the best, right? The meditation and everything else. So my sons were not involved other than to support me because they had their own education and their careers that they were developing.
And they all like the medical industry. That's
But they all
interesting.
like the medical industry, yeah. Mike is now an ear, nose, and throat surgeon.
Wonderful.
And loves his practice. And David is now an RN, but he's also a first assist, and he works with surgeons.
Oh, wonderful.
He went to school after a while and became licensed to work with surgeons, and so he contracts with surgeons to help them in surgery.
Very impressive.
So, and he lives in Wellington with his kids, and Mike lives in Pinecrest.
Oh, so
Now,
they're-
Jimmy, the youngest, after his being in the medical care business, he was a counselor in a mental health ward at North Shore Hospital, and he came to work for the Islander and then worked here for almost 15 years.
Oh,
And he
okay.
was doing the advertising like his father did,
Is that
working the
cute?
streets. Yeah,
Yeah, he stepped in his father's
right,
shoes.
he
How
did,
wonderful.
He did. But then he and his family decided to move on, and they went to Colorado
Oh, just recently? Or
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Oh,
And they
that
love
was,
it.
that was a little tough for you.
It was tough, but I have great visits when I.
Oh,
I can
Colorado's
go.
a
It's so
beautiful
great.
place to
It is.
go.
I love the mountains.
Yeah.
I thought I'd miss the water a lot,
Mhm.
but I love the mountains.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's something magical
very
about the mountains.
majestic about them.
Yeah.
So that's where Jim is, but they're all supportive. They're directors of the corporation and officers of the corporation,
Right.
and so they support me in pretty much everything that I do.
When your husband was ill, do you remember who the people who worked for the newspaper, what your staff was, or how big a staff you had? At that
I
time?
had a staff of probably nine or 10
Oh,
at
so
that
it was a
time.
pretty big,
Yeah, we had two or three reporters, and of course Linda. Then Nancy came to work for us in August of that year, so she never knew Clyde.
Oh,
But she
after he
came to
passed
work
away, she
because
came.
we had an opening with Linda taking over the publisher.
And that's Nancy
job.
Ray, who's the
Nancy
editor
Ray, our
now.
present publisher and editor.
Oh, she does a
And
terrific
she moved
job.
on up, and she's been here 25 years.
Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing how it
isn't
all
that
works
amazing?
out. Was the system of getting the newspaper printed, was it much the same those days as it is today?
No, because of the technology, you know. In
It's always
in those
changing.
days, early days, we typed the paper, pasted it up, and then we took it to a printer, and they took pictures of the pages and, put it through a press that they had at the time.
So you'd have
And
to drive over to Miami?
I had to drive off island to go to a camera shop to take our film to be developed.
Well, that's right,
Until-
those days it was all film.
Yeah, and then we had typewriters, as I said. Then we moved on, and we bought a huge. At a newspaper convention, we saw this wonderful camera, huge camera that did lots of things, and we bought that and put that here, and so we could do our own pictures. We could process our own pictures ready for print. We could enlarge them and decrease them, and so on and so forth.
Well, that saved a lot.
Yes, it saved a lot. Saved
time
a lot.
and money.
We could make copies of ads and use them from week to week instead of using the same one over and over. And then we had a typing machine, and I can't remember the name of it. Sorry, but anyway, we had this big typesetting machine that we all learned, and that. We produced our ads by using that, and it was all done by film.
Everything
And
was
strips of film, and then we used rubber cement, and then a little bit later wax. We had a wax machine that we ran everything through that, and then we could paste it,
Oh,
paste
okay.
the pages, the elements on the page.
Now, I know in the few years that I've been here, the quality of the newspaper has changed.
Yes, it has. We have.
So, I mean, I love it. I don't get that newsprint over my hands.
We
but,
don't so much anymore. No, we don't,
No,
because of the quality of the newspaper and also the stock we use for the color pages. I mean, it's quite advanced now. And we transmit by email, so we don't even leave the office.
Oh, so there's no more driving over the bridge
No,
anymore?
No, and we have a driver that brings the paper here to us on early, well, actually Wednesday night late.
It'd be Wednesday night late.
Yeah.
And then you
Right,
distribute.
So we're ready to go, and the carriers all work in the middle of the night on Wednesday night delivering the paper. It's all done early, so that we're on the doorstep first thing on Thursday morning.
Oh, so it's an all-night operation.
Kind of, yeah.
Is that something?
Yeah.
And
We
I
have-
guess it's always been
I
that
think we have
way.
3 carriers that take care of it now, 2 or 3.
Yeah, and it's always been that way.
Yeah, after the children, we had to stop using the children because of insurance problems and liabilities.
Oh, so
We had
children
to
couldn't
stop
have the
using
newspapers
children.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was sad for people because that was the first job for a lot of the kids on
Sure.
Key Biscayne.
When I was a kid, I had a newspaper route.
Yeah.
It was pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah,
So it was a way for a kid to earn money those
right.
days.
Earn money and meet people too. And,
That's
yeah,
right, and have their
yeah.
own little businesses.
Mhm.
Those days they'd
Right.
have to collect themselves.
Mhm. Right. So a lot of things have changed. The technology, of course, for the paper itself has
Oh, it's
changed.
constantly
And we
changing.
just with each time it's changed. Thank goodness for the revenue that we receive. We can keep up with this equipment and be as modern as we can be.
Well, it's something really to be
contemporary.
proud of, let me tell you.
Mhm.
Now, I went back through some of the old newspapers, and I noticed that incorporation went on for quite a few years. That was an overwhelming story.
We had to really pay attention to what we were doing in those days.
Well, you had to be careful
was-
because you had 2 or maybe 3 sides to the
Yes,
story.
exactly.
Of
Well,
the
there
issues
were the
going on.
pre-incorporation days. We had a
Mhm.
council, an unofficial key council, and with elections and all. And so they sort of managed the town. And then the incorporation people came into being. And actually, in 1975, we ran a supplement to the newspaper on incorporation. At that time, people wanted to incorporate. And so we did a special supplement on that, which is very interesting. We have here in the office.
That is interesting, as far back as 75, because it was incorporated, when, in 1992? I believe?
91. Mhm.
91.
And splitting from Dade County was something that we've always talked about doing. Because that we always felt that we weren't getting the services that we should enjoy here.
But that was tricky for you because it was very controversial,
Very,
different sides to it, so you had to
because
be
of
as...
the money and finances.
I'm sure. But you had to be neutral, give both sides, and
Mhm.
that puts an added pressure,
Yeah.
especially on a small town.
Right, and we editorialized. We kept up with all of that. And then when the council, when we incorporated and had our own councils, in the very beginning they were called trustees,
That's right.
and so we at election time, we even had editorial an election board, an editorial board of people who interviewed the candidates, so that we could make our choices for who we wanted.
Oh,
Yeah, we've stopped
that was
doing that.
important.
We've
But that was
stopped doing
important those days.
It was
though,
important in those days to help inform the community.
because people didn't know.
Mhm.
It was very difficult.
Mhm.
Then, okay, we're incorporated. Then 92 hit, Hurricane Andrew.
Right after that,
Were you able
practically,
to
yeah.
continue going? Did you miss a newspaper?
Absolutely no, we did not.
You had a hurricane as
We did
Category
not.
5, and the
No,
newspaper came out?
Andrew came in '92 in August at about 5 in the morning, I think. I was away. I went to Savannah and to visit my sister. And Andrew came about early in the morning on Monday morning. So by Friday, we had a paper together. And we were able to get back on the island, and our offices were fine. Everything was fine here, thank goodness. We had our reporter, we had a couple reporters, and Daryl Nicholson was our photographer. And he got right out there and took pictures of people clearing their yards and cutting down trees. And it was pretty
Amazing.
devastating. It was hard to recognize the place because street signs were down, trees were down, bushes were crushed. people had to go slowly. We had to learn our way around the island again.
Had to be very
It
difficult.
was really hard. And right away, the Chamber of Commerce picked up the ball and had meetings and and developed ways and and seminars for the businesses on the Key.
Oh, that's
So,
wonderful.
so that they could get back in business. And the chamber was just responsible for it. We also formed a huge event, which we held in November of that year. I think it was in November, and to pull the island together and to display the businesses and to get people back to living again.
Oh yes, that was a devastating event.
Normalcy
And-
was a hard thing for a while because landscaping was. Thank goodness we were incorporated, because we were able to develop our own plan of restoring the island.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Excellent point. And then get the plan,
Replanted
but then get it started,
get it started.
on your time
We
schedule.
were the people who did it. Yeah, we could do it for ourselves, so that was very important.
Okay, so
And
when
the Islander kept up with all of that. There was a lot of news, a lot of ads too came in
of course,
for the people who were working here on the island at the time.
and looking for work or needing
Yeah,
work.
mhm.
So here we think it's a sleepy little newspaper, but it's really not.
No, we kept up with it, and we've done that with the other hurricanes that put us down. And Wilma was the one where we had to put it together practically by candlelight.
That's
But
right.
we did it, and because
The electricity was out for a
the
long
electricity out was out for a long time, but we got that done. Electricity went back on, but the printer lost all his electricity, so we couldn't have it printed there.
Oh.
And Sir Speedy helped us, and then we did the final copies, and it was all separate pages, and we stapled them together. Everybody sat in this room, and all the staff, and we stapled the newspaper together, and we got it out.
There's a lot of history in this
Lot
room.
of history. Yes,
I'm
there
looking
is.
at the volumes
Oh, it's
behind
in
me.
here. It's in here. Yeah.
I'm looking at all these volumes. So you have bound every newspaper?
We're up to date, plus the ones that existed before our Islander news, and so we're very proud of it. And that people are welcome to come and go through these. In fact, we have people who come up, and in fact, people from the village come up a lot to go through the papers for history
Sure.
of events and things that
But
have
what a
happened.
treat that is to come over here and go through and just
It's
see
fun.
the history
Takes
of
you
the
back
island.
in time. You get lost and you start reading them all, and then you turn a page and then you read some more. And
Because it is a history of the island.
Well,
mean,
it
this
is.
newspaper is said every week. You're out there telling what's going on the island, what's new, what's
Yeah.
happening, what people are thinking. I think that's almost as important as the news.
Absolutely. it
With
is.
your
That's why
editorial-
our opinion pages are open and so well used, because we do want people to think. And I think one of the fun things that people get a kick out of is the rant and rave.
Oh, I love
Now,
that.
some
one.
people think it's terrible because
Yeah.
they don't sign their names. People want to know who said that.
But it's a small island.
But the Florida Press Association, we're members of the Florida Press and award winners for several years with the press. And they loved the idea of the rant and rave. They thought it was a great column to add.
I think it's
And
fabulous.
space allowing, we have that in as often. And we have a separate extension for that. And people can call in day or night and rant or rave.
Or rave. I think
Nice
it's a
to
great
have some raves. We get a lot of rants.
You get a little bit of
Yeah.
everything.
And sometimes, oftentimes they develop into stories.
That's
They
right.
develop into story ideas, and like even our advertising and the classifieds can develop into nice stories here or there.
Now, I noticed there's a lot of pictures on the wall, a lot of awards. Maybe you could go through some of
Well,
us and tell
yes,
us
for
about
years
some of them.
we attended. We submitted articles in the paper itself to the Florida Press Association awards, weekly awards, and we won in our division 5 years straight, and we were so thrilled about that.
Of course.
Yeah, so we've kind of winded down from that. We haven't submitted anything in a couple of years. It's just it's time consuming, but it's a proud thing to do. So we do. We have FPA awards up there, and a couple pictures over the years, and some of the things that we've won. We used to keep them all, but there wasn't room for them
This is no
anymore.
room.
Yeah.
Have you always been in this building? the building?
No, when we first started, we were, of course, we were in the houses.
Right, your
People's
neighbor's
houses,
house.
Right, and not until Tom O'Brien bought the paper in '71. After that, then we met in different buildings. We met in a basement. We had an office in the basement of the Sonesta Beach Hotel.
Of the Sonesta originally.
Yes, and
yeah.
that was a thrill. Little tiny place, and there were just 3 of us working there.
Yeah.
And Ann Tennis and Liz Wren and myself. I had the drawing board. Liz did the finances, and the other things, and Ann was the editor.
Is that something?
And Tom was publisher, of course. So, but we met there, and then we came. Then we met in the office in the doctor's office for that while. We were there, in West Enid, in an office.
At the doctor's office?
It's behind Winn-Dixie. Probably a lot of people don't know it's there.
Oh, yes, I've
Yes,
seen
the
it
building,
back there.
actually adjacent to Winn-Dixie.
Right, right. And so that's where your office was
That
there?
we were there for a little while, and
Yeah.
then we like to say we think we were the first people who came in here as tenants. When it was
where you
built.
are now, in this building?
Yeah.
And this
we
building?
were in this office in the front part of it.
And this is called, what building do they call
This is called the Key Executive Building.
Your executive.
Mhm.
And you've been here how many years?
And we've been here now since 1971, so
Oh.
do the math. Right, a while. And we've added on and we've subtracted space as we've needed, so, and right now in 2000, we totally redid our offices and put in the cubicles and remodeled totally.
Always changing, always evolving.
Changing, right, always evolving.
Well, you have been a pioneer to Key Biscayne,
Yeah.
and I personally want to thank you for that. You've made a change. You've made a difference. I think you've made...
Oh, we like to think so.
Well, you make Key Biscayne a better place, you and your husband and your family, so I want to personally thank you.
Oh, you're
and
very welcome.
Every
It's
week
an honor and a pleasure.
thank you. Every week I look forward to the Islander News, and
Good.
I think you will at home. It's a wonderful newspaper. It's a wonderful history of Key Biscayne. Read it, and now you're going to read it with a little more heart. You know what wonderful people live here and contribute to our Key. Thank you for watching. I'm Teri. This is brought to you by the Key Biscayne Historical and Heritage Society.